Hello, we are here at RightsCon in Taipei with Hadi Al Khatib. Hadi is an activist and an archivist who's been collecting, verifying, and investigating citizen-generated data as evidence of human rights violations since 2011. His project, the Syrian Archive, exposes and draws attention to human rights violations committed by all sides of the Syrian conflict and ensures that journalists and lawyers are able to use the verified data for their investigations and criminal case building. So good that you could join us, Hadid.
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
So yeah, this is a very personal story for you, right?
Okay, I'll go. We can start this podcast again if we want. No, we'll just go for it. Just me and Nell, like both at the starting line. We both really wanted to have you here on the podcast because it's such a significant moment these last couple of months for yourself, for Syria. How are you doing? First, what was it like to go back to Syria? How did that feel? And how are you going?
Because it was 14 years that you were in exile, right?
Yeah, I was in exile for 14 years. I wasn't be able to go there, see family or friends for a very long time. So it felt really great, really. Like it felt like a dream, just being there, walking in the streets, meeting my father first time after 14 years. That was amazing. And also like being in the streets, listening to people talking about politics, criticizing what's happening in terms of the current government and what happened before. And this is something that it's the first time I experience in my life. Wow. Being in the streets, from the children until elderly people, everyone is speaking about politics. Everyone is having opinions, voicing their opinions. That was really amazing. And just being there also, I missed it so much, being there and
eating your food, smelling the smells.
Exactly.
Like just it's funny because like both Nell and I are from Australia and we've never had the misfortune of having to be in exile. And in fact, there's a number of people here at RightsCon where we're broadcasting from who are in self-imposed exile, not because they want to be, they don't want to be asylum seekers, they don't want to be crossing borders, they don't want to be, they want to be able to feel the dirt of their own country under their own feet. And so this idea about diaspora, essentially the Syrian diaspora has been all throughout Europe and across the world, really. Is this a common thing of people heading home? Are people able to head home?
It's a common thing, absolutely, for the people who have residencies or European passports or kind of passports in third countries, because they're able to go back to Syria and then visit their families, visit their loved ones, and then come back to Europe or come back to wherever they are living. Some Syrians are leaving altogether, leaving European countries with their children, with their families, and going back home. But there are challenges with that. The challenges are sometimes people are going back to no home. Unfortunately, some areas have been completely destroyed. In this case, it can be tricky. So some people prefer to visit, see the situation, see what they can do, meet their loved ones, be in the country, and then go back to wherever they are living outside of Syria. And the ones who have a place to stay, they are going back. And I think more and more people are going to go back once they have a place to stay, once their home is rebuilt again. So they are waiting for this moment to happen.
One last personal question. What did your dad say to you? What were the first words he said to you when you... Or maybe not the first word, but
I mentioned there were tears of joy.
Or was it just physical hugs?
My father, he didn't know what I was doing for 14 years.
Wow, really?
He had no idea. I really wanted to keep it like a secret. Yeah, I wanted to keep it a secret in case he was asked, he doesn't know information. So when he heard this, he was like, oh my God, that's really great work, but I'm so happy that they didn't come to us, pick me up for years.
Well, you did a good
you
job
were protecting him and your family. Tell us about that project that you were working on, the archive. How much documentation did you gather over those 14 years in exile?
We gathered around 6 million records
Okay.
of documentation.
Amazing.
Wow.
So it was, when we calculated it, it's about like 20 years of video footage.
Wow.
So it's a long, it's a big footage, lots of materials documenting international crimes in Syria since 2011 until recently, until last year.
And how is that information now being used to prosecute some of those offenders?
The information has been used years ago by prosecution authorities in Europe, by UN mechanisms, and the latest case we are working on is a case related to the use of chemical weapons in Syria. This case, we have right now the hearing of it at the Supreme Court in France to either validate the arrest warrant that is going to happen against the former president of Syria, Bashar Assad, which is a huge deal for us for this to happen.
Absolutely.
Syrians will be really happy if this happens.
Rejoicing in the streets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Where is he? Is he in Moscow?
He is in Moscow, most probably. We saw footage of that, of his son. And most of the rumors saying that he's in Moscow. But even that, I think an arrest warrant will be really good for Bashar al-Assad, because people in Syria will feel a little bit satisfied
Safe
and
safer,
safe.
maybe.
Yeah.
Does so this collection of evidence strategy, which we're actually hearing a lot about here, not just in Syria, about
Yeah.
this like documentation of human rights abuses,
Yeah.
and the cataloging of it. Like, how do you store it, and how do you process it in a way that make it available? Who's watching it, and how do you determine? How do you tag it? How does that all work?
So just to
Reveal
say,
your secrets.
yeah, I'm absolutely all for it. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, just to let you know, 10 years ago, we had nothing. We had to start from zero, from scratch. And this work of large-scale documentation, we first faced it in a country like Syria, one of the most documented conflicts in modern history.
And this is documentation on mobile phones,
It's
largely
mobile
videos,
phones, cameras, videos, all
yep.
published on social media platforms and the internet.
Already.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had to start by connecting with the security community that works with the human rights community, the community that I know through RightsCon, so events like this, through my work in the human rights field. And we started together to think about what is a safe technical infrastructure to store these materials on the long term. So they volunteered in order to help create this infrastructure, which was amazing. And then we built a lot on that. So first, what we really need to build is the technical infrastructure. So the server, the storage, and then the software in order to collect this data at a large scale, and in order also to organize it large scale. So we did that, and it took about 10 years in order to be solid doing this work, also not just in Syria, but in different countries under the umbrella of Mnemonic, the organization that currently I'm managing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, we had to build the team in order to kind of have the skills to use the materials. Because when you get into the archive with thousands of materials, you get lost. How would you like to use it? How you're going to be, verifying it?
Where do I start? Should I start at 3.5 million?
Exactly.
The catalog.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the index.
Yeah, the index.
Exactly.
The tagging.
Yeah. So the organizing and tagging is a big thing for us, in order then to be able to use it for criminal accountability. So building the skills of the team is really important. Third thing that we did is we needed policies, workflows, protocols in place in order to kind of have a smooth way of doing the work. And we needed to make sure that it was peer reviewed by our partners from the community, the lawyers that we know, the technical people that we know, the researchers that we know, historians that we know. They looked at it and they all contributed to making it happen in terms of methodology and protocols and policies. So it took all that time in order for it to happen.
Do you know, I remember back when we were founding Access Now back in 2009.
Yeah, yeah.
And we used to have these like early conversations with YouTube, right? Where, particularly in Iran, where it was like, um, do you remember the Netta video? The video of the young girl who was killed in a protest, and
Of course.
her graphic alert just here. I'm just gonna, if you want to switch off, but you
Yeah.
actually watched the video of her dying. You watched life move from her eyes, and it was recorded on YouTube. And but there's one particular video that is like so, and unspeakable. And I remember the conversation with YouTube is like, but what happens if YouTube goes broke? Like what
Yeah.
happens to that video
Yeah.
if YouTube goes broke? And they're like, no, under no circumstances. This is an important video for the rest of humanity. This is like and you had the vision, and your team had the vision of like, well, we're not going to rely upon corporate America to be
Exactly.
the record,
Exactly.
the records holder of the
Exactly.
abuses that have happened against us.
Yeah, to our narratives and history, and so on.
And it sounded, when YouTube was a friend, like, okay, we're safe. But like,
Yeah.
what happens when Mark Zuckerberg and Bashir Assad become whatever? Who knows?
Yeah.
So
Become allies, you
become
mean?
allies, exactly. And so, I'm getting the 5-minute warning, which is crazy. But now maybe you want to jump in, and if you have questions.
Well, I know that I have heard that the war in Syria was the world's first climate war. What do you have to say to that? I mean, is that just a distraction from what was actually going on the ground?
Not really. There was a lot of environmental damage that happened during the war. Lots of forest has been burned, farms have been burned. Also, the oil fields were used really in a way that polluted the country and damaged certain locations around it. And there has been really amazing reports about this from an organization called PAX, that did open source research about the environmental damage in Syria during the war. And we used the same methodology in order to expose that. And this was really clear.
Not just environmental damage, but cultural damage as well.
Yeah.
If you think
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
the souk that was burnt in
Aleppo.
Aleppo.
Yeah.
I've been to that souk.
My God.
I've been there. I've walked through it. It was.
When were you there?
I was there in maybe like 2000, something like that,
Wow.
or in the 90s.
Maybe
I can't
you
Crazy.
have some documentation
Crazy.
that could be
I-
archived.
Totally.
No, I drove through Syria, through the whole of Syria, from Turkey to Jordan, through Syria. I think that was the route. But I went to that souk, and it was still. I mean, it's been, so there was a fire. It's like 1,000-year-old marketplace.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a fire went all the way through. They had the battle was happening inside.
That's
So it's-
true.
Yeah. So the cultural battle,
Heritage, yeah.
cultural heritage,
Yeah.
the environmental damage, the digital. Let's talk about for a moment like what's happening now. Like, where is, as you sort of move towards a democracy, or if you move, like how is the digital sphere, which has become so important to to elections, to political agendas, to the operation of civil society, what's happening now?
After the war, unfortunately, the technical infrastructure is really in a bad situation. And it only works in certain locations that are close to neighboring countries such as Turkey, because it was outside of the control of the government, and there's some infrastructure that Turkey helped in building. So there you can see there's internet and mobile communication and so on. So in areas like in Damascus, for example, the capital of Syria, internet is very slow. The infrastructure is in a really bad situation. It will take time in order for it to be built, and it will take also sanctions to be lifted in order for companies to build.
I saw the letter that came out, which was about the sort of lifting of sanctions,
Yeah.
the tech sanctions on Syria.
Yeah, exactly.
Understandable. Yeah.
That's really important first step, because without this infrastructure, we won't have any way to be able to communicate and organize, for example, and use the internet to research and so on. So that's the first step towards that. And then as the transitional government goes through creating certain constitutions, there will be absolutely also legislations or rules around
Right,
the
the
internet.
governance, yeah.
Exactly, the governance around the internet. And we are looking into that very closely, and Syrian civil society organizations with international organizations such as Access Now are looking into this very closely in order to make sure that we give the best advice possible to the current government on how to move forward with such legislations and laws.
Access Now has experience with that, actually, because I
Absolutely.
remember the sort of governance framework and legislative proposals for the opening of Myanmar to
Yeah.
telecoms. Like, it's almost like not starting again, but you also have the memory as well of what can go wrong and the experience of what can go wrong.
Absolutely.
We wish you all the best in that.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And how do we've got to wrap up, unfortunately, but tell us what's next for Syrian Archive, for Mnemonic? Tell us, and also, for Syria writ large. Like, give us a little bit of the future for you.
What's next for us is really to kind of make sure that the archive that we worked on for a long time, over 10 years in Europe, moves slowly to Syria, because I think it's really important that the Syrian
Yeah.
people are aware of what happened. They see the materials and the records of what happened. They work through it. We use it for memorial purposes, for accountability purposes. Everyone in Syria is very optimistic, and I really hope the best for this country.
Yes, so do we. Thank you
for
so
joining
much.
Thank you
us.
so much,
It's
guys.
been
Thank you.
so interesting.
Thank you.